Hello and welcome back everyone. In today's video we'll be looking at the background property. Now the background property can be used for so many things ranging from colors to images and so on. So let's start with using the background property for a color. So now instead of using the background color, you can just put in background and that just does the same thing. So now we have this, but now when using the background property we get a whole lot of other properties that we can use alongside it. So in an example like this, where we've used the background property to set the color of this box, we can use the background clip property. Now this mostly works with backgrounds that are set to colors. So to see this in action, we'll want to have a border around this, so we can put a border of, let's say we want to have something thick, so 10 pixels, solid, let's say black. Let's save this and go back. So now we have our border here. So now let's say we want to define where this color starts from. So now the background clip property gives us three different options. So let's just get that background clip. So we get border box, content box and padding box, then the generic inherit and initial. So for this property, the border box property value is the default value. So this is without setting anything, this is the default value that every background will have. But now if we set this to padding box, and to see this in action, let's set a padding to this box. So we can have a padding of, let's say 35 pixels. Let's mute this for a second and let's see the results we have. Okay, so now we have a padding of 35 pixels. Then let's add some content to this red box. So let's collapse all this. Then okay, so this is our red box here. Then we can add some text like h2 lorem. Let's make this short. And we can now have a paragraph tag. Okay, so let's save this and see the result that we have. So now this is what we have. So now in our CSS code, you can see now that we have different stylings for this background clip property. As we've looked at, we have the border box property value, we have the padding box, and we also have the content box. So let's look at the padding box. Now what this does is it puts this color to the edge of where our padding starts. So for us to get a better visualization of this, let's make this border dotted border. So we can mute this first so we can see how the default value looks. So now as you can see, our color starts all the way from where our border starts. Now when we set this to padding, when we set this background clip property to padding box, our background color will now start from where the padding of 35 pixels we set. It will start from there. Then for the last property, the content box, now this will start from where the content in this div starts from, which is here. So when you refresh, and that's it. So all this space now is the padding we gave, and starting from the area where our content begins. So that's the background clip property in a nutshell, and how you can use properties alongside the background property. So now if you look here, we have background, then we have background color, background image, position, repeat, and so on and so forth. So to just make this generic, you can use background and set either a color or URL to an image or whatsoever. So but for now, we'll use the background image property. Then we also need to get an image, so we can just, let's check, do we have an image? Okay, yes, we have an image here, so let's use that and see whether we get a good result. Then all I need to do is to set the URL to that image, and the URL is about us.jpg. Then I can remove this background clip property and padding and border also. So just the box we started with. Then let's go back and refresh and see what we have. Okay, so now we have this. Let's get rid of the text that we have in the red box, and let's add a bit of a line break to separate this second image from the first. So okay, so now this is our first image and this is the second. Now if you notice something about this first image can actually be manipulated, dragged around, saved and whatnot, while this does not work like that, and any interaction with it will just be as interacting with the div element. So but if you notice, we actually get a different result when we use the image tag and when we set the image directly from the CSS. Now we can change this. We have different properties, and one of them is the background size. So we can set the size of our image. So I can set this now to 100 pixels, and so let's wait for that. And you can see our images now have been set to 100 pixels in size. But if you notice, we have our images that keep on repeating in order to fill up the whole width of this div element. Now to stop that, we also have another property, and that is the background repeats, and you can just set this to no repeats. So the default value is set to repeat, but we don't want that. So let's save and go back. So just wait a bit, and now we have our image here. Now let's give our div some color so that we can actually see where our div is. And refresh, and now we have our div showing up in red. So now let's see how we can actually manipulate this image the more. Now we have in the background size, we can use this, and also a second value which will now work for both width and height. So the first value will be considered width, and the second value will now be considered the height. So if I save this and go back, you would see that our image now has been stretched a bit. Let's increase this and check out the values. So set this to 180 pixels. So now the height is 180 pixels and the width is 100 pixels. If you also stretch this out, so let's set this to 500 pixels, which is the width of our div. and you can just see how you can just manipulate this image as much as you want. And if you just want a consistent square, you can just use one value which will now work for both the width and the height. So refresh, and there we have it. So now if you notice, if we inspect this image, you can see that even though we set this to 500 pixels, if you notice our box is 500 pixels, but our image, the width is actually 500 pixels but the height is not. And that is because this image has reached its maximum original orientation. So if we actually want this image to fill up this entire div, there is a property that we can use, which is still also the background size property, but this time we will not use CSS units of measurement. So now there are two values that we have, and that is the contain. So let's see what the contain property value will give us. So now the contain property value scales the image to its maximum orientation, just like how setting to 500 pixels scales it to the maximum orientation. But now to make this fill up the entire parent or the div, you use the cover property. So if you look at the property that we get, so let's cover. So scale the image while preserving its intrinsic aspect ratio, if any, to smaller size, such that both its width and height can completely cover the background positioning area. So this method does not change the aspect ratio, so whatever the aspect ratio is, it keeps it at that, but rather it zooms in the image in order to fill up its parent. So if I refresh, you can see what I'm talking about. Now we can see our image gets zoomed in. So now we have our image loaded in correctly. Let's say we want to position this image in some other way, because right now where we are having shown is just this part of the image. But now let's say we want the right side of the image to be shown, or some other way. We can use the background position property for that, and that is background position. Then we can set this to right. Now notice and look at the image. So let me just duplicate this so we can compare the results. So now you can see this is how the image is now. This is how it was previously and how it is now. So now the right side of this image is being shown. Then of course the default value is now left. So let's go back into our code editor, and we have left. Then we also have the background position of top. Now notice if we use the background position top or bottom, we get another result, and that makes our image to be shown. It makes the center part of our image to be shown. Now if you notice, this is the left side and now this is the center, so all the way from here is being shown, and we get that same result if we use the bottom. And that's it. So let's say this image was, let's say our height component was anything smaller, like let's say 200, or let's say we'll give it something smaller like 100 pixels. Now when we go back into our page, you'll see that the bottom part of our image is what is being shown here, and if we set it to top, it will be the top part of our image that we'll be getting as a result. Yeah, so that is how you can position an image in CSS, and they will also have the center position. So let's set this back to 500 pixels, and this is the result that we get. The center part of our image is being shown. So now that's how we can position our image using the background position property. So now we've seen how we can use the background property to do a lot of things, especially using the background image property, and that will be it for this video. And in the next video we'll be looking at some other CSS properties, and not really properties, more like pseudo classes and pseudo elements, and how we can add more styling to specific elements and how they behave, such as links and how links behave after being clicked, the colors they show, and a lot of other things. I'll be looking at that in the next video. So bye for now, and you can check out more about the background property on W3 Schools. So you can just go to W3 Schools background, then you get here. So there's a whole list of different things you can look through to understand this more. If you don't understand, there are many more properties that we didn't go through in this video, and you can just go through them to understand what they do and how they affect your elements. So see you in the next video, and bye for now.